Welcome, Bill Harrington. Thanks for being with us. And I would love it if you could maybe just introduce yourself and your role with the Innovation Cup.
Yeah, hi, I'm Bill Harrington. I work for St. Elizabeth Healthcare currently. I'm a director of quality improvement. I also teach at University of Louisville and University of Cincinnati. University of Louisville, I teach in the Master of Engineering Management program. And at University of Cincinnati, I teach in a healthcare operations excellence program that's new, and it's been a joy to get that started. Certainly embraces the principles of industrial and systems engineering in advancing that into clinical education as well, or education and healthcare. Um, I've worked in manufacturing for the first 10 years of my career, and for the last 14 years, I've been in healthcare, uh, pretty much in a role doing continuous improvement kind of work and advising teams through that work.
And so, what's your role with the Innovation Cup and how long have you been a part of that?
Yes, thank you. My role is I help more on the planning side of things in terms of how we're going to facilitate evaluating, and then now even more so with positioning of the cup. There are other awards and accolades out there that speak to improvement kind of work, which is definitely part of what industrial and systems engineering is all about. So some of that is generating um, more interest in the award and helping to boost its visibility in the market.
For those who may be thinking about doing a submission, maybe you could help us understand what are some qualities that they're looking for that will make a good, strong project.
Right. So there's four high level criteria that a submission is evaluated with. First is challenge. That really kind of gets at the purpose of the project. Why was the project, or why was the initiative so important to the organization to do? That needs to be supported by um, evidence. So what was the performance gap? What was the impact to the organization? And maybe some of its larger objectives or needs. Was there any kind of societal relevance to it? That helps as well. And what uniqueness was there? How did the problem present itself in a way, or the challenge present itself in a way where there was something not typical with what was being addressed, or the approach that might be needed in addressing it. Uh, so that's challenge. Then there's solution, which the solution has three criteria of relevance, novelty, and how well it's quantified. So um, on the relevance piece, what we're looking at there is how how much does that solution apply the industrial and systems engineering principles, philosophies, tools uh, to the solution. So that that's the portion of relevance, as opposed to relevance to society or societal impact, as I mentioned under challenge. So this is a different type of relevance. In terms of novelty, that's kind of like along the lines of uniqueness. If you have a unique kind of problem that you're solving, there should be some novelty potentially in the solution. You may be solving something that has minimal uniqueness, but there's some kind of um, difficult constraint to navigate, or it's a brand new approach that gets uh, vastly improved performance than what previous types of solutions would have done. So novelty, sometimes could be something that involves a technological change, which just could be a software approach on something, use of AI, and I don't mean to just throw out buzzwords there, but be thinking in that engineering space of how do we get step function improvement from what we've had in the past. that ties into the quantifiable piece. How do you measure that success? So going along the lines of the importance, the same kind of metrics in challenge that would have been used to measure the importance of the problem could also be used for the quantifiable piece under solution. However, those metrics and measurements should be really targeted at the process or the direct objective being met by the project. So a project may, for instance, improve response time to some type of customer demand. Now, the importance to the organization might be some kind of sales or revenue recovery that's expected to be had. And that could tie in as well. Implementation is now the third category. So we've covered challenge and solution, now to implementation. And that's going to be one, has it been implemented and how long has it been implemented for? We look for at least 1 year.
Mm.
Okay. Now we don't want a submission that's, 20 years old, right? Because that's so far in the past. But we also don't want to have it be something that we just did last month and it hasn't been tested in terms of its sustainability, which is also another factor in there, is demonstrating that sustainability over time. And I will talk a little bit more about sustainability as well um, once I wrap this up. Impactfulness is kind of ties back to that quantifiable piece under the solution. Then it's, well, how much impact has been observed? So where quantifiable would be, how could it be measured? Impactful would be, how much did it move, the project measure, and then even any other kind of bigger business outcomes like we were talking about with, either revenue or cost reduction, or I would even start to step into things that might be broader quality metrics or safety metrics. We think of the broader view of value in this. So that covers implementation. And then finally is communication. And communication involves components of a video. So submitters will put in a video that shows or demonstrates what the project or what the improvement initiative was. There's then a presentation, and then there's a Q&A session, question and answer session. So the ability in that space, I like to say, and this is a common saying, a picture's worth 1,000 words, right? So when you're doing your video, you may be dealing with something that's a bit abstract. Okay, well, can you show a process map? Can you show maybe how things, flow through the process, giving it that infographic kind of feel to it? Are there interviews that you could do with stakeholders that could articulate the benefits that they've had? The more concrete, or if you're dealing with something in manufacturing, maybe you can show the process, in real time taking place, or, obviously recorded, but seeing, equipment or whatever moving around. In my past, when I worked in manufacturing, I was advised to take a picture or a video clip of the process from before the change, and then to do it after the change. So if you can get up at a high point of the factory, where you can be observing above, if there's a mezzanine or something, those are great video clips to show how do things flow before and after. Do we see a change there? Can we see better organization, better, fewer, better just flow of the process, those kinds of things. And then obviously the ability to present that information clearly and to answer questions clearly. I think on that last piece with communication, what any presenter ought to do is to take people from another area of their organization and share the presentation with them. So take people who've never seen this work before. they might work as part of your company, but use them as sort of a test subject to see, did the way that we communicate this, did this make sense to you? Were there any questions that we left open? That definitely helps to kind of prepare as you look to submit. I will say on the sustainability piece, the solution being, and this gets back to implementation, I want to spend a little bit of time on this. The sustainability piece, the solution is sustainable for the next couple of years. That's what we're kind of looking at. What really helps there is, have you had to evolve or adapt the solution at all? Have market conditions changed? Has new technology come in to play that you've had to modify the solution around? Those are things that really would sell on the sustainability side. So that's really how things are evaluated, and it's kind of some tips and tricks along the way, but four basic criteria of the challenge, the solution, the implementation, and the communication. So challenge, solution, implementation, communication are those four components. Does that
I
help?
see. Yes. And so my next question is about, because this is it's a team challenge, and so my next question is about what makes a great team.
Well, I think, there's the inner workings of the team and the way that they relate to one another. And so many of us are familiar with the storming, forming, norming, and performing cycles of team formation, or parts of that cycle of team formation. I would say that a great team is one that's addressing a problem with the right stakeholder representation. So mm, the more unique the challenge, we might find that those are more complex challenges that involve um, more of an interdisciplinary team need. So first thing would be, what makes a great team is one where all the core stakeholders are represented. And then how did that team work together to really solve the problem? I think one of the, for folks that are looking to uh, do some work that would, if you have an idea on, hey, if we solve this problem, this would be a really great submission down the road. So maybe you haven't already done your team work yet, or your project. If you're looking to solve a unique problem now, a good way to get started on that is to take an inventory of the process. If you've heard of the SIPOC tool for suppliers, inputs, process outputs, and customers, that's a great tool to inventory the process, get a high level view of the process, and identify who are those key stakeholders in the supplier and customer columns of that tool to involve potentially in the project. Now, it doesn't mean that every supplier and every customer to the process have to be involved. You really need to understand, are they key stakeholders? Is there something that they can do to change the process and make it better? If they have that ability or that autonomy to change the process or interact with it in a way that changes the outcomes, then those are folks you need to involve. Once you get in the work, to help, what I find really helps with the storming, norming, and performing, is to get off on the right foot. And clearly stating what the problem is, and, how you're going to measure it, and what solution, before you get into any solutions or anything like that, make sure you have the problem well defined coming in. But the next thing I would say is, once you have that problem defined and what the goal or the objective is to ask the stakeholders in the team members, what are you hopeful this project would resolve? What are you fearful could go wrong? And what that does is, before we even start talking about before we start going any deeper in the problem, and well before we're talking about solutions, we're getting out on the table, what are the things that are most important to people in this journey? I'll give a great example. In healthcare, we might be working on reducing turnaround time in an operating room. So between surgeries, between surgical cases, we want to reduce the time from the close of one case to the open or cut of the other. All right. Well, in in going from close or final stitch of or starting stitches or starting close of case one and going to in first step in incision of case two, that time is time where we're not doing surgery, right? No surgery is happening during that time. But there's a lot of really important work that has to happen, right? So if value add is the surgery and non-value add is all the other stuff, some of that stuff, though, is very important from a patient safety standpoint. So if we were trying to reduce the time between cases, that might be a goal or something that we're hopeful for is that we would reduce that time. Maybe we don't run over, staff doesn't have to stay around and work too much overtime. That those could be all the hopes. But then the fears could be is, well, what if we rush and we jeopardize patient safety, right? So getting those things identified on the front end, and what I find that does is that helps to avoid unintended consequences. And I think when you present a project and show that thoughtfulness on the front end, it's certainly going to help when you deliver your presentation as well as speaking to how effective the project was, how impactful it was.
Yeah. So looking at this competition, we want to think of it as kind of more than just a run-of-the-mill competition, but what does a team or an organization stand to gain by going through this?
Yeah, so I think the big thing that we're trying to position this with is not just we solved it and it's done. There's a lot of competitions or a lot of stuff out there where we're looking for, where organizations or reviewers are looking for how impactful, just from a results standpoint, was that one project. What we're looking for here is um, that's part of it, but the sustainability piece, I think, is something that really sets this apart from others. That it's been done, that the it's not just while there's a minimum time of 1 year, we would also accept an application where that has been in place for 3 or 4 years. Um, I think that's a little bit different from other, types of awards. Um, and we're also looking at how is that evolved from that sustainability standpoint. I think it demonstrates a true commitment to, in order to be successful in achieving this award, you really have to commit to the journey, right? So I can tell you, having worked in an organization here where we've committed to improve reducing patient harms, and that's not just been a 1 year project and we were done. That's been a multi-year event, and we've seen year over year reduction in harm. That's the kind of stuff where and there is a story told there with more interventions coming into play or adapting those interventions over time as well, working on the reliability of those interventions.
Yeah. And the Innovation Cup brings together teams from all kinds of industries. As you said, healthcare, but also tech, manufacturing. What do you think that says about the versatility and the relevance of industrial systems engineering today?
Well, I think it can be applied anywhere. There's I think a bumper sticker that ISE has, and I think it goes along the lines of engineers make things, industrial and systems engineers make things better.
Right.
So I think it's sort of like we can exist in any industry, but our whole
Hmm.
point is around how do we apply that improvement science. So going back to the previous question, I think there's also an angle there is I think ultimately what organizations get out of this is you'll gain some maturity for certain in this in terms of your walk in the industrial and systems engineering journey that you're on, right? And that will alone benefit an organization. Sorry, my late. That alone will benefit an organization. right?
Yeah.
Being on that industrial and systems engineering journey. Any award, you can do it for the award, that's fine, but I think the lessons really are learned in the journey. So the selling point is not just have an award or an accolade. Um, I think it's the maturity that you'll gain in the process.
Right. I agree. And a lot of these winners, I mean, they're very proud. I've talked to a lot of them, and they're just very, very proud of their work. It's really great to see.
Well, I think there is an aspect, and something I think we'd like to see, from a committee that's, working with this award, is that over time, hopefully this is something where companies can use this as a recruiting tool, especially with industrial and systems engineers, to say, we've won an IISE Innovation Cup. That should say something about your culture.
Yeah. Have any last minute advice for those people thinking about entering a team into the IISE Cup?
I would say you'll only learn in the process.
Yeah.
So just find something that fits the criteria that I mentioned.
Hmm.
Seek out those opportunities. If and when they present themselves, just give it some thought about the opportunity to take it through.
Great. Well, Bill Harrington, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Elizabeth.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.